Let's take a look at solving the following linear equation. Negative 3 times the quantity x plus 8 plus 7 equals 3 times the quantity x minus 1. Now this linear equation involves several steps. And when that's the case, the first thing I like to do is I like to simplify each side of this equation. That is, I will write down simplify each side of the equation. And what does that simplification involve? That simplification involves actually two sub-steps. The first of which is I will apply the distributive property, if I can. And then the second thing is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to combine like terms. So I'm going to apply the distributive property, and then afterwards I'm going to combine like terms. This is how I begin any equation that involves multi-steps. So let's write our equation down. Our equation is negative 3 times the quantity x plus 8 plus 7, that's on the left side, equals 3 times the quantity x minus 1 on the right side. Now I want to start by simplifying each side of the equation. And doing so, I want to apply the distributive property. So let's start on the left, and the distributive property occurs where I have the parentheses. And so I have negative 3 times the quantity. So I'm going to distribute the negative 3 to the two inner terms. That's going to give us negative 3 times x plus negative 3 times 8, which is negative 24. So I can just write minus 24 plus 7. I'm also going to simplify on the right side of the equation, and again, I see parentheses with a 3 next to it, denoting a distributive property. So I'm going to distribute the 3 on the right side, and that's going to give us 3x minus 3. Now that the distributive property is finished, I want to continue simplifying each side, and I specifically want to look on the left side and observe that there are two terms that are like terms. I have negative 24 and positive 7. They're both constants, so I can simply add them up. And so I have negative 3x minus 24 plus 7 actually gives me negative 17, plus negative 17 or minus 17. On the right side, the 3x and the 3 are not like terms. One has a variable and the other one's constant, so we can't combine them. So now I've finished simplifying each side of my equation. Now is when we start applying our addition-subtraction properties of equality. That is, our goal is to get x by itself, to isolate x. And generally, I like to put x on the left side. So we're going to use our addition-subtraction properties of equality to move terms. So we're going to apply the addition-subtraction property of equality. That's the next step. And in order to apply the addition-subtraction property of equality, I want to observe I have two sides to an equation. And the idea is whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. All right, so if my goal is to get the x's on the left, that means I need to remove the 3x from the right side. So I am going to get rid of that 3x by subtracting it. 3x minus 3x is 0, so it removes it from the right side. But the addition-subtraction property of equality tells me whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other, so I'm also going to have to subtract 3x from the left side. Doing so is going to give me negative 6x. Negative 3x minus 3x is negative 6x. I will carry down the minus 17 or negative 17. Then I have 0 minus 3. So my equation becomes negative 6x minus 17 equals negative 3. I'm going to continue applying the addition-subtraction property of equality, but this time I'm going to get my constants together. My x is on the left, so let's get the constants on the right. That means I want to get rid of the minus 17, and in order to get rid of the negative 17, I'm going to have to add 17. That'll give me a 0 constant on the left. And the property of equality says that whatever I do to the left side, I have to do to the right side. So that means I'm going to add 17 to the right side. And so that makes my resulting equation negative 6x equals negative 3 plus 17, which is 14. All right, so far so good. I now have all my variable terms on the left side and all my constants on the right side, and I follow the very last step. And again, these are the steps that I take for every equation that's a linear equation that involves multi-steps. I first simplify, then I use the addition-subtraction property of equality, and the last one is I use the multiplication-division property of equality. So let me just write down very quickly, division property of equality. It's a property of equality, which means whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. In this case, I either multiply or divide. So let's take a look at our equation. Remember, we're trying to isolate for x. And so to get x by itself, I notice x is being multiplied by negative 6. So the way to get rid of that negative 6 that's being multiplied is actually divide. If I divide the left side by negative 6, when I take negative 6 divided by negative 6, I get the number 1. And 1 times x is what's going to give me x. So if I have negative 6x, I'm going to have to divide the left side by negative 6 in order to get x isolated. But the division property of equality tells me whatever I do to the left, I have to do to the right. So I'm also going to divide by negative 6 on the right side. Doing so gives me negative 14 over 6. But I can go one more step and reduce this fraction to lowest terms. I notice that 14 and 6, well, what do I notice about those? Those are both divisible by 2, right? 14 is 7 times 2, 6 is 3 times 2. And so really, I can just cancel that common factor of 2, or if you like, divide both the top and bottom by 2, and that gives me the reduced fraction, negative 7/3. So the solution to this equation is x equals negative 7/3.